I never thought I would have to fight for the house I grew up in, the one my father built with his own two hands. But when Diane, my stepmother of only 3 years, slid that eviction notice across the kitchen table, 6 months after Dad passed, something inside me snapped. She gave me 30 days to pack up my entire life and disappear. Little did she know I had recently discovered some interesting documents in Dad's safe that would turn her smug ultimatum upside down. I was the rightful heir to this house, not her. Before I tell you how I went from being thrown out to watching my stepmother pack her bags within 24 hours, drop a comment letting me know if you have ever had to stand up to an unfair authority. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories of justice served. My father James was not just my dad, but my best friend and business partner. He built our construction company from nothing, working 16-hour days when I was a kid. After Mom died of cancer when I was 15, it was just him and me against the world. Those early years without her were tough, but they forged an unbreakable bond between us. After graduating from college with a business degree, I joined Dad's company. He insisted I start at the bottom, hauling materials and sweeping job sites. "You cannot lead men whose jobs you have never done yourself," he always said. I respected that and worked my way up over a decade until we were true partners in the business, expanding from residential to commercial properties across 3 states. Dad remained a widower for 14 years after Mom passed. He dated occasionally, but never seemed interested in remarrying. That all changed the night of the annual Builders Association charity gala. I remember it clearly because it was the first time in years that Dad seemed genuinely excited about someone. Diane Marshall, 25 years, his junior at 38, had recently joined the association's board of directors. She was attractive, charming, and seemed genuinely interested in Dad's stories about the early days of building the business. What I initially interpreted as genuine interest, I later recognized as calculated pursuit. Diane zeroed in on Dad with laser focus, laughing at all his jokes and touching his arm when she spoke. Within weeks, she had become a fixture at our Sunday family dinners. "She makes me feel young again," Rich Dad confided one evening after Diane had left. His eyes had a spark I had not seen since before Mom got sick. Despite my reservations about her intentions, how could I object to something that brought him such joy? Their courtship moved at lightning speed. Within 8 months, Dad announced they were getting married. No engagement period. No long planning process. Just a small ceremony at Diane's church, with her friends and family outnumbering ours 5-1. "Are you sure about this, Dad?" I asked the night before the wedding. "You have only known her less than a year." "When you get to my age, son, you do not waste time," he replied, adjusting his tie in the mirror. "Diane understands me. She supports my dreams for the future." I supported him, stood as his best man, and welcomed Diane into our family. But within months, subtle changes began. Dad started missing our weekly fishing trips. He became less involved in day-to-day operations at the company, leaving me to handle client meetings he would never have missed before. When I would call the house, Diane often answered and explained Dad was resting or unavailable. The real trouble started when Dad was diagnosed with heart disease at 63, just 2 years into their marriage. What should have brought our family closer instead created a deeper divide. Diane appointed herself his exclusive caretaker, a role she performed with theatrical precision when others were watching. But employees from our company who made home deliveries reported seeing Dad alone for hours while Diane was out shopping or having lunch with friends. I tried everything to maintain my connection with him. I brought lunch to the house, offered to take him to appointments, even suggested moving back temporarily to help. Diane blocked every attempt, insisting he was too fragile for excitement or sleeping after his medication. The few times I managed to see him alone, Dad seemed diminished somehow. The strong, confident man who had taught me everything was fading away, not just physically, but in spirit. During one rare moment alone, he gripped my hand with surprising strength. "Richard, there are papers in the safe," he whispered urgently. "Remember, the combination is your mother's birthday." Before he could explain further, Diane returned with his medication, and the moment was lost. 3 weeks later, Dad was gone, passing in his sleep, without me getting to say a proper goodbye. Diane had called me after he was already taken to the funeral home. The funeral was a surreal experience. Diane, dressed in designer black, accepted condolences with practiced grace, while I stood numb with grief. She orchestrated the entire service, overruling my suggestion for Dad's favorite country songs, in favor of somber classical music he had never once played at home. When I objected, she whispered harshly, "This is about appearances, Richard. We need to show proper respect." The reading of the will delivered another shock. According to the documents presented by Diane's choice of attorney, she inherited nearly everything, including the family home I had grown up in. The business remained primarily mine, due to existing partnership agreements. But the house where every childhood memory lived now belonged to a woman who had been in our lives for just 3 years. Despite the loss of the home legally, I continued living there. After all, it was massive with 6 bedrooms and plenty of space for both of us to coexist, while I sorted through Dad's personal belongings and got my bearings. Diane reluctantly agreed, I suspect only because challenging me might have appeared heartless to their social circle so soon after Dad's death. For 6 months, we maintained an uneasy truce under the same roof, passing like ghosts in the hallways of what used to be my home. Those 6 months of coexistence were increasingly strained. Each week, another piece of my childhood home transformed under Diane's direction. The weathered leather couch where Dad and I had watched countless football games disappeared, replaced by a cream-colored sectional that would show every speck of dirt. Mom's carefully tended garden was ripped out for a low-maintenance rock landscape. Family photos that had lined the hallway for decades were replaced with generic artwork. The house needed updating, Diane would say dismissively whenever I noticed another change. But it was not just the decor that was vanishing. I started noticing family heirlooms disappearing as well. My grandmother's antique clock that had chimed every hour of my childhood was suddenly being repaired. Dad's collection of vintage fishing lures that should have come to me was put in storage for safekeeping. Most disturbingly, my mother's jewelry collection pieces Dad had saved, specifically for my future wife, was nowhere to be found. When I asked about these items, Diane's answers became increasingly defensive. James wanted me to have those things. He told me so privately, she insisted when I inquired about Mom's sapphire pendant. Besides, what would you do with women's jewelry anyway? Her passive-aggressive comments grew more frequent. "This house is really too big for a single man," she would remark over breakfast. "Or have not you thought about getting your own place closer to the office?" The tension escalated when Diane's younger brother Marcus moved into the guest house. She never consulted me, simply announcing one evening that her brother needed a place to stay temporarily. 3 months later, he was still there, hosting loud parties when Diane was out, and treating the property as his own. One evening, returning from work earlier than expected, I overheard Diane on the phone in Dad's study, a room she had declared private weeks before. "I need more time," she was saying, her voice tense. "The assets are not as liquid as we thought, and the stepson is still hanging around. No, I cannot just access the funds immediately. There are legal considerations." My suspicions grew. I began paying closer attention to her visitors, particularly the men in expensive suits who came by when she thought I was at work. Through business connections, I learned she had been making inquiries about selling the house despite her assurances that she intended to honor James's memory by maintaining the family home. Then came that Sunday morning, 6 months to the day after Dad's funeral. I was having coffee on the patio when Diane approached with an envelope, her lawyer hovering awkwardly by the sliding door. "I think it is time we formalize our living arrangements," she said, sliding the envelope across the table. "I have been more than generous allowing you to stay this long." Inside was a formal eviction notice, giving me 30 days to vacate the premises. No discussion, no negotiation. "This was never really your home anyway," she added with cold finality. "It belongs to me now, and I have plans for it." I maintained my composure, though inside I was shaking with fury and grief. "I see," was all I said. That evening, Diane invited several of their mutual friends for dinner, where she announced my impending departure as if sharing happy news. "Richard is finally getting his own place," she told everyone at the table. "It is time he established his independence. Do not you all agree?" The sympathetic glances from people who had known our family for years only intensified my humiliation. These were Dad's friends, people who had watched me grow up now, nodding along as I was being pushed out of my own history. After everyone left, I sat alone in the darkened living room, the weight of the day crushing down on me. Then I remembered Dad's last coherent words to me: "Papers in the safe." Dad's study had been largely taken over by Diane, but the old floor safe remained hidden beneath the oriental rug, a secret even she did not know about. With trembling fingers, I dialed my mother's birthday, and the heavy door swung open. Inside were stacks of documents I had never seen before: property deeds, trust paperwork, and a sealed envelope addressed to me in Dad's handwriting. I spent hours going through everything, my shock turning to understanding, and finally to a sense of grim satisfaction. At 2 in the morning, I called Michael Thompson, Dad's lifelong friend and personal attorney, not the one who had handled the will reading. "I am sorry to call so late, Michael, but I have just found some documents in Dad's safe, and I need to know if they mean what I think they do." After describing what I had discovered, Michael's voice took on a new energy. "Richard, bring everything to my office first thing tomorrow. And do not say a word to Diane about what you have found." That night, sleep eluded me entirely, but in its place came clarity and purpose. The 30-day countdown Diane had started would not play out the way she imagined. I spent the remaining hours before dawn formulating my plan, making notes, and preparing for the confrontation to come. By morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. For the first time since Dad died, I felt a sense of control returning. While Diane had been meticulously planning to erase our family legacy, she had overlooked the most important detail my father had been planning too. The next morning, I greeted Diane with unusual calmness as she prepared her morning coffee. My demeanor clearly unsettled her, as she had expected tears or anger after yesterday's eviction notice. "I would like to have a family meeting this evening," I said, casually adding a slice of bread to the toaster, "to discuss the transition. I will cook dinner for 7 o'clock. She studied me suspiciously but nodded. "Fine. I have plans until 6:30 anyway." "Perfect," I replied, with a smile that did not quite reach my eyes. "And feel free to invite your brother. This concerns him too." After she left for her weekly salon appointment, I launched into action. My first stop was Michael's law office, where we spent 2 hours reviewing every document I had found. His conclusion left no room for doubt. "Your father was smarter than any of us gave him credit for," Michael said, organizing the papers into neat stacks. "Everything is in order. We just need to file these with the county records office today." Next, I visited my father's 3 closest business associates, men who had known him for over 40 years. I shared what I had discovered and secured their support for what was coming. Their outrage on my behalf confirmed I was doing the right thing. At the county records office, I spent another hour with a clerk who remembered my father expediting the verification process for the property documentation. By early afternoon, I had official copies of everything I needed. My final stop was a security company owned by a former client who owed our construction business a favor. He agreed to have 2 plainclothes professionals available on short notice for that evening. When I returned home, I found Diane had been busy as well. Her cousin Jeffrey, who happened to be an attorney specializing in probate law, had arrived early and was sitting comfortably in what had once been my father's chair. "Richard, I hope you do not mind that Jeffrey is joining us for dinner," Diane said with poorly disguised triumph. Given the circumstances, I thought legal counsel might be prudent. "Not at all," I replied. "The more witnesses, the better." I prepared Dad's famous pot roast recipe, a meal that had marked every significant family occasion throughout my childhood. The irony of serving it tonight was not lost on me. As we sat down to eat, I could feel Diane's impatience growing with each passing minute. Finally, after serving coffee, I retrieved the folders I had prepared and placed them on the dining table. "I have given your 30-day notice some thought," I began calmly, "and I have decided to accept it." Diane's smug smile emerged instantly. "I am glad you are being reasonable about this, Richard." However, I continued, sliding one of the folders toward her. "I am giving you 24 hours to vacate the premises." The silence that followed was absolute. Diane's fork clattered against her plate as Jeffrey leaned forward with sudden interest. "What exactly are you talking about?" Diane finally managed, her voice rising. "This house never belonged to my father," I explained, opening the folder to reveal the property deed. "It has been in an irrevocable trust established by my grandparents when I was born. My father was merely the trustee with me as the beneficiary upon reaching the age of 30, which happened 2 years ago." "That is impossible," Diane snapped. "The will clearly stated." "The will covered my father's personal assets," I interrupted. but he could not bequeath what was not legally his to give. This house has been mine for the past 2 years. Dad continued managing it as we had always lived here together, but ownership transferred to me on my 30th birthday. Jeffrey reluctantly examined the documents I provided, including certification from the county records office dated that very afternoon. These appear to be legitimate, he admitted, ignoring Diane's glare. This is some kind of trick, Diane insisted, her carefully maintained composure beginning to crack. James would have told me about this arrangement. Just like you told him about selling his vintage car collection, I countered, sliding another folder across the table. Or how you told him about the 4 other wealthy widowers you pursued before him. Her face paled as I revealed printouts of her previous relationships, complete with obituaries and property transfer records that showed a disturbing pattern. Or perhaps I continued. You were planning to tell him about the jewelry you have been selling off piece by piece. This was when I played my strongest card. I opened my laptop to show footage from security cameras my father had installed throughout the house during his final year, cameras Diane never knew existed. The footage clearly showed her removing items from the family safe, including my mother's jewelry, and later meeting with a man identified as a private collector known for buying estate pieces with no questions asked. This is an invasion of privacy, she sputtered. You cannot spy on me in my own home, but it is not your home, I reminded her. It never was. And removing those items constitutes theft, which is why the police are very interested in this footage. As Diane's face cycled through shock, rage, and finally fear, I revealed my final bombshell. Dad filed a separate private will with Michael Thompson, 6 months before his death. He was beginning to suspect your true motives, Diane. This will place most of his personal assets, including his share of the business, in a trust that specifically excludes you. I slid the final document across the table. A copy of the trust agreement, showing Diane's entitlement, was limited to a small allowance, and the assets she had brought into the marriage, nothing more. This is preposterous, she hissed. I will contest everything. It will take years to resolve. You are welcome to try, I replied, but given the evidence of systematic theft I have already provided to the authorities, I doubt you will want the additional scrutiny. Now about that 24-hour timeline. I gestured toward the front window, where 2 security professionals now waited beside a company vehicle. These gentlemen will be staying overnight to assist with your transition. They will ensure nothing leaves this house that does not rightfully belong to you. Diane's desperate eyes sought Jeffrey's, looking for a legal loophole, but he was already gathering his papers. I suggest you comply, Diane, he said quietly. From what I have seen, Richard's position is legally sound. Contesting it will only extend your legal troubles regarding the missing items. As reality set in, Diane made one last attempt to negotiate. You cannot just throw me out. I need time to make arrangements. You gave me 30 days, I reminded her. I am giving you 24 hours. The security team has instructions to help you pack your personal belongings, nothing more. Anything in question will be inventoried and held pending legal review. As Diane stormed from the room to make frantic phone calls, I felt no satisfaction, only a hollow sense of justice. My home would remain my home, but the cost had been high. My father's final years spent under the influence of a manipulative gold digger who never loved him at all. The next morning was chaotic. Diane moved from outraged to desperate as her attempts to secure emergency legal intervention failed. By noon, she was supervising the loading of her personal items into a moving truck, while the security team meticulously documented everything leaving the house. The most satisfying moment came when I received a call from a detective who had executed a search warrant on Marcus's apartment based on the theft evidence I had provided. They recovered several family heirlooms, including my grandmother's antique clock and Dad's fishing collection, which Marcus had been attempting to sell online. Another breakthrough came when the security team found a key in Diane's jewelry box that led to a private storage unit across town. Inside was a treasure trove of family history photo albums Diane had claimed were accidentally discarded. My mother's remaining jewelry collection, and even my father's military service medals that had disappeared from his study. As Diane's car finally pulled away from the house, I stood in the driveway, feeling an overwhelming mix of emotions. The relief of reclaiming my family home was tempered by grief for what Dad had endured in his final years. I had won this battle, but my father had lost precious time to this woman's deception. Rather than immediately erasing all traces of the past 3 years, I decided to renovate thoughtfully. The house needed to heal just as I did. I started with my father's study, restoring it to the warm book-filled space it had been during my childhood, complete with the old leather chair that still held the indentation from Dad's favorite sitting position. In the weeks that followed, the legal aftermath unfolded predictably. Diane attempted to contest the trust, but Michael had prepared everything meticulously. Her claims were dismissed within months. More surprising was what we discovered during the legal proceedings. Diane had targeted at least 3 other wealthy older men before my father, using the same playbook each time. In one case, she had been named in a lawsuit by the man's children, but had settled out of court to avoid publicity. Michael shared something that both pained and comforted me. In the months before his death, Dad had begun to suspect Diane's true nature. He had confided his growing concerns to Michael, which prompted the creation of the second will and the hidden cameras. He knew he had made a mistake, Michael told me over drinks one evening. But James was always too proud to admit when he was wrong. Instead, he worked behind the scenes to protect you and the legacy he built. The most heartbreaking discovery came when I found Dad's personal journal hidden in a compartment of his desk that Diane had overlooked. In it, he documented his growing suspicions and regrets. "I fear I have invited a stranger into our lives who may harm Richard's inheritance," he wrote in a shaky hand, dated just months before his death. "My foolishness may cost my son dearly, but I am taking steps to protect what matters most." With the legal matters settled, I focused on rebuilding family connections that had frayed during Diane's time with us. Cousins who had stopped visiting because of Diane's cold reception were welcomed back. Dad's poker buddies who had been told he was too ill for excitement returned for monthly games in his honor. The house once again became a gathering place for people who had genuinely loved James Richard Mason. Not for what he owned, but for who he was. In Dad's memory, I established a scholarship fund for young people entering the construction trades. It felt right to honor his belief in hard work and learning from the ground up. The first year, we awarded 5 scholarships to promising students who otherwise could not have afforded training. The house gradually transformed again, not back to exactly what it had been, but to something new that still honored our past. I replaced the sterile decorations with warm lived-in pieces. The garden returned with Mom's favorite roses taking center place. 1 year after Diane's departure, I hosted a family reunion that brought together relatives from across the country. As we gathered on the patio where generations of our family had celebrated milestones, my uncle Thomas, Dad's older brother, pulled me aside. "James would be proud of you, son," he said, his eyes misty, "not just for protecting the house, but for preserving what it stands for. Family, history, continuity." That evening, after everyone had gone, I sat in Dad's study with a glass of his favorite bourbon. On my desk lay an unexpected letter that had arrived that morning, exactly 1 year since Dad's passing. The return address showed Diane's name, now with a Nevada location. For a long moment, I considered throwing it away unopened. What could she possibly say that would matter now? But something in me needed closure, a final period, at the end of this painful chapter. The letter was brief, not apologetic exactly, but reflective, in a way I had not expected from her. She acknowledged her actions without justifying them, and expressed something that might have been regret in another person. The final line stayed with me. "Your father saw the best in everyone, including me. That was both his greatest strength and his greatest vulnerability." It was as close to understanding my father as Diane had ever come. He did see the best in everyone, believed in second chances, and trusted perhaps too easily. But those same qualities had made him the man I aspired to be, despite the pain they sometimes caused. As I placed the letter in my desk drawer, I realized the true inheritance my father had left was not this house or his business, but the example of how to live with integrity, even when it is difficult. The lessons he taught through his actions remained more valuable than anything Diane could have taken from us. In reclaiming my home, I had also reclaimed the future Dad had wanted for me all along, one built on the solid foundation he had provided, but constructed according to my own design. Have you ever had to stand up for what was rightfully yours, even when it seemed impossible? Share your stories of reclaiming what matters in the comments below. If this story of family legacy and justice resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe to hear more tales of turning the tables when life deals an unfair hand. Do not forget to share with someone who might need encouragement to fight for what belongs to them. Thank you for joining me on this journey of loss, justice, and rebuilding. Remember, sometimes the most important thing is not just the house you live in, but the home you create within it.